racism originating on X, and this is a response video to a video I saw with regards to this topic. This topic is regarding a young lady at the time who was 16 years old by the name of Lois McGee, and her lawsuit against Jet Magazine. And the reason why she sued Jet Magazine at this time was because they were alleging that she was a Negro who wanted to be an Indian, and this is what you see on the front cover here. So what we're going to do is just kind of dive in a little bit and see what this article within Jet actually entails. So here you can see that the name of this article is Haliwa Indians in Hassle going to North Carolina Negro School. And it says, after a half century of attending classes with Negroes in northern North Carolina, a handful of Haliwa Indians went on the warpath last fall and began whooping it up for a separate school. Their request fell on deaf ears, for indeed, said officials, there was neither anything in the law nor in Warren County coffers which would make such a move feasible. Furthermore, they added many of the Haliwas were registered as Negroes, not Indian, and that, it seemed, should have ended the matter. But prodded by a transplanted Philadelphian named W.R. Richardson, the Indians got their backup, moved their youngsters into a building near the Negro school they formerly attended, and declared they were there to stay. For Richardson and his tribesmen, the move was a victory of sorts, and the smoke signals he sent up spelled it out to his cotton, tobacco, and peanut growing compatriots in the region and in neighboring Halifax County. He became chairman of the school board, started handling the Haliwa money, boarding the 3 Indian teachers. He ambled around the area, corralling others to join the Haliwa group, and unsuccessfully sought to have Warren County, where the school is located, take over its operation. Failing in this, he hustled over to Halifax, got a firm no from officials who declared the school was not their problem. He very nearly got the Haliwas declared Indian, but lost his bid when Rep. Frank Pittman of Halifax killed the measure after his colleagues protested there might be confusion when others claiming kin to Haliwas also sought Indian status, said Pittman. Once, when Richardson was trying to convince me that he was really a red man, he said, feel me, see if I'm not an Indian. I told him I've never felt an Indian or a Negro, so I wouldn't know the difference. While Richardson has some defenders, he has detractors. Under the title Negro Says Indians Making Trouble, he had some detractors as well. Among them, in his brother-in-law, Vernon Lynch, president of the Hollister Elementary Negro School, PTA, who fumes that the Haliwas are not Indians at all, but a mixed-blooded clan with some white-colored and Indian ancestors, says Lynch. My mother said she never birthed no Haliwa Indian. Richardson, for proof, waves the Lynch family birth certificates, recently changed from color to Indian, and says Lynch himself was responsible for their alteration. Lynch declares everything was going along lovely until Richardson come back from Philadelphia. They, the Haliwas, had a couple of meetings in people's houses. I went to one meeting and I come back and I couldn't sleep. I turned over to 1 Corinthians and Paul asked the question, was Christ divided? When I read that, it ran in my mind that if I kept going to the meetings, my family was going to be divided. There are 2 complications in the hassle over the Haliwas. State Superintendent of Instruction, Dr. Charles Carroll, says that Indians have never been carried in school statistics as white. Indians have always been carried in school statistics as white. Normally, attended Indian schools since most lived in fairly confined residential areas. But in some areas, he said, they attended white schools. This factor may have prompted some Haliwas to have their birth records changed when they discovered they were listed as colored. The Haliwas themselves are not a tribe. Their name, a recent invention, formed by combining the words Halifax and Warren to make Haliwar, then dropping the R, according to Richardson, because Haliwa sounded more Indian, like Chippewa or Catawba or Hiawatha. Many of the 3,000 Haliwas in the adjoining counties, however, are still listed as Negroes and are likely to remain so. Most still attend the Negro church. How the problem will finally be solved, no one is willing to guess, but with neither Halifax nor Warren countless disposed to support the school, it seems the Indians will have to go it alone. So this is the article from that actual Jet magazine that caused them to get sued. Now, I found the whole entire article, the newspaper article, which was from the News and Observer in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it's dated Wednesday, March 5th, 1958 on page 20, and it's titled, Indian Sues Jet Magazine for Big Sum. It says, a 16-year-old Indian girl of Halifax County has sued Jet Magazine for $300,000 for allegedly calling her a Negro. One of her attorneys said here last night. George Anderson, local attorney and assistant solicitor of this district, said the magazine used the picture of Miss Lois McGee of Hollister on the cover of the December 5th issue of the magazine. On the inside of the magazine, Anderson said the magazine carried a story which contended the girl was a Negro who had tried to change her race to Indian. The case was filed in the Wilson Division of East District U.S. Court. Anderson and local attorney Ben Templeton are representing Miss McGee. Anderson said the story that appeared in Jet had been rewritten and distorted from a feature story concerning the Indian school in Warren County near the Halifax County line. The newspaper story, he said, appeared in the fall of 1957 and carried a picture of Miss McGee. So originally the story was supposed to be speaking about something completely different, right, concerning the Indian school in Warren County. However, they ended up making the story about Negroes who wanted to be Indian. Now, this next document that I found is a thesis that was written actually on this particular matter specifically, and it's titled Challenging the South's Black-White Binary, Haliwa-Saponi Indians and Political Autonomy. And it's written by Marvin M. Richardson, a thesis submitted to the faculty of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in partial fulfillment of the requirements of the degree of master's in the Department of History. All right, so this was something that someone had to actually submit to get their master's degree. All right, so we'll start with the introduction. The introduction states that for months in late 1953 and 1954, rural southwestern Warren County and southeastern Halifax County, North Carolina, had buzzed with unease ever since members of the Haliwa Indian Club began meeting in Haliwa Indian leader B.B. Richardson's pack house, a building to store feed and other farming supplies. The matter was urgent. They wanted to break Jim Crow customs. The custom racial culture grouped Indians like Richardson together with blacks into the category colored, effectively denying recognition of their identity as Indians. Those Indian meetings prompted violent threats from both black and white locals, many of whom accused the men and women meeting at that old club of being so-called fake Indians, who were acting uppity as if they were better than other colored folk. At the local colored schools, such as Hollister School, the rumor mill swirled as children who possessed a colored identity informed their openly Indian classmates of their parents' plots against the Indians. "Oh, they're going to kill my daddy," thought one Indian student after a classmate told her that his parents planned to burn down her house. The members of the Haliwa Indian Club deemed the threats serious, and on one cold January night in 1954, newly elected Haliwa Indian Chief Jerry Richardson and a few others patrolled a wheat field parking lot with loaded shotguns in hand to protect club members. While Richardson patrolled the outside, the other Indian leaders occupied the small pack house, sitting on bags of wheat, hog feed, and fertilizer while conducting the Indian business. The pack house brimmed with emotions of outrage and protest, prompted not only by outsiders' threats, but also by the determination to overcome discrimination and gain recognition of their birthright as Indian peoples. This meeting was but the first of many actions the Haliwa-Saponi Indians took to assert their political autonomy in the Jim Crow South. Haliwa-Saponis and other American Indians challenged the fallacious belief that only African Americans and whites have historically occupied the South. Recognizing a third race in a racially binary society belied both blacks and whites' notions of race and identity in the South. The Haliwa-Saponi sought political independence, but not because of their pureblood or any stereotypical markers of Indian identity, rather their survival as intact group showed that even under the essentialized racial system of segregation, mixed racial ancestry was not a barrier to outsiders' acknowledgement of Indian identity. Indians finessed this question with remarkable shrewdness. Indians, blacks, and whites have intermingled and mixed for hundreds of years, but Meadows Indians, as Haliwas had historically referred to themselves, strategically denied African American ancestry while acknowledging white ancestry. Racial ancestry and identity are different, even though American society has conflated them. So basically, this part of the thesis is just talking about the difficulty of indigenous Americans within a binary racial society and wanting to be independent of those labels. The last part of this is an excerpt that talks specifically about the Jet Magazine lawsuit or the Jet Magazine article that led to the lawsuit. And it says the national and local press found a provocative story in the dispute between the in-laws. An article in the black-centered Jet Magazine highlighted the dispute between the two and was extremely negative towards the Haliwas Indian claim, calling them so-called Indians. The Haliwa problem probably caught the attention of Jet Magazine due to African Americans' effort to integrate schools and misguided idea that the Haliwas were simply Negro people changing their identity to Indian to somehow escape Jim Crow's wrath. The magazine relied on the fact that up until the Haliwas established their organization, they did to a certain degree acknowledge the term colored and did attend colored schools and churches. The situation was much more complicated than that, and fighting that designation was not new, but it was largely invisible to outsiders. Okay, and so the main piece of this, right, is that this particular group of indigenous Americans, they knew who they were, they knew their history, they knew their culture, they wanted to keep all that intact. Most importantly for future generations, they were fighting this binary system, and not only that, they were fighting media, they were fighting governmental agencies, and that particular fight was not isolated. This was something that was happening in many different places, especially here in the South. But what I want to point your attention to is at the very bottom of this excerpt, right? At the very bottom, you're going to see in the footnotes, on footnote number 54, it says, the magazine's front page featured a picture of Eloise McGee, a Haliwa Indian, who successfully sued the magazine for calling her a Negro. So the purpose of this response video was to hopefully add some context to the story, but also to add a correction based on this particular thesis that the Haliwa-Saponi Indian tribe successfully sued Jet Magazine, and this had a profound impact on the future of this tribe. So with that, I appreciate you all for listening. Thank you very much.